Welcome to Karen's Conversations, number 35. And I have the great pleasure of talking to Barrie Clarke. And we're going to talk about project management is changing, or is it, in the era of the fourth industrial revolution, let's say. So I'm going to throw straight over to Barrie before we start the conversation. And welcome, Barrie. Please introduce yourself.
Well, thanks, Karen. I'm Barrie Clarke. I'm currently living in Canada. I was originally from the UK. I'm a management consultant, and I specialise in the area of project and program management. And I also specialise in IT quality and technical strategy. I'm currently a managing partner over at Q4IT here in Canada, and I'm in the process of building out that business with the support from the guys over in Europe and the UK. And I'm also working on a book, Project Management Back to Basics, which is going to be released later this year.
Awesome. That's great. You can tell us, I think we'll probably be talking about some of the stuff that you're going to be covering in the book during this conversation. So my first question is, as of today, what do you see some of the biggest challenges for project management as a discipline and a capability in organizations today?
Well, I think there's a couple of key areas, and the first one is speed to market, actually delivering stuff at the pace that technology is moving at. I do think it's a significant challenge. I think we have, in business, created some of these challenges for ourselves. I think there are limitations on leveraging full-time employees to work on projects. I also think there is significant challenges of working with contractors and suppliers and getting things done in an expedient, efficient manner. I also think some of that has to do with what we declare projects, and also how we go about getting approvals for projects and working through these things as well. I do think we've forgotten somewhat the role of the project manager as well, and what it is that they actually do and where they add value. And I think it's something that we could definitely readdress to help us get things moving faster to market. And I think one of those is where the project manager actually lives in an organization today. They tend to be at a junior manager level and that kind of thing, whereas in the past, PMs would operate at maybe executive director level, or at least be reporting into that level, so they're enabled to get decisions made faster. I also think there is confusion today. Again, I think we're part of that ourselves, in that there are so many different methods and approaches to delivery. And we even get confused in business between what is a method and what is a framework. And I really do think we need to go back to basics and figure those things out, because it can create confusion. You know, we're delivering against X, or we're delivering against Y, we're delivering with this method, or we're delivering against that standard. It gets really, really confusing. And I think if we went back to the intention of project management in the first place, and that is the project manager is there to be delegated responsibility for the successful delivery of something, whatever that something is. So ultimately, they're also there to figure out what's the best way of doing this as well. What tool should I use? You know, you wouldn't tell a carpenter which chisel to use. You wouldn't tell a mechanic which spanner to get out of his toolbox. So why would you tell a project manager what's the best way of doing stuff? Obviously, they need to consult with someone, but ultimately, governance and those kind of things should be in the realm of the project manager. They should be able to tell you what the delivery approach looks like, and how you would go about doing it. So, you know, all of the words around best practice and method and framework, we shouldn't really care about that in the business space. We want qualified, experienced project managers to tell us the best way to move things forward. And that way we will get things done faster.
Absolutely. I love that analogy, Barrie. It really rings true. And I think in so many realms of business, not just project management, we've just over-engineered everything. And, you know, we've got so many methodologies and best practices and frameworks out there, which is great. And I think we start to drown amongst them rather than look, which is the best one for this job? You know, I need a spanner for this. Let me get the best spanner. Well, I need a hammer for that. Let me get the hammer, rather than try and use them all, you know, because we think we should. So we get, over-engineering. And of course, things, as you mentioned at the beginning, you know, things are moving much faster now. You know, we're hearing the words transformation, disruption, you know, and yeah, you know, automation, you know, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all that thing is going to disrupt us, and change is happening faster and faster to organizations. So how do you see projects, you know, coping with that increased speed of change?
Well, I hope we get better. That's my you know, my vision of the world is that we need to get better at defining what is a project in the first place and what we are going to be taking on. What could be in the realms of our vendors and our service providers, and what effort they should take on, and how we constrain them. But I think there's an awful lot that we declare projects that really shouldn't be projects at all. And I think that's where we're finding constraints, or that's where we're finding perceptions about what can be delivered or what should be delivered are incorrect, because we put this big wrapper of governance or this big wrapper of control around initiatives that really don't warrant being these things. You know, what's the definition of a project? It's bringing something new or enhancing something that exists that's high cost, high complexity, high risk. If it's an in situ maintenance upgrade or something that we should just be handling as part of our day-to-day activities, should they really be projects? And if they're not, then we can handle these initiatives through delivery management and get them to market a lot faster, because we don't have to go through all of these approvals. We don't have to go through the bits and pieces that we should do. We actually should be narrowing the scopes of projects based on complexity, based on risk, and based on their cost, or the profile of the project. You know, if it's the CEO's pet project, then maybe he wants some oversight on it, then fine. But we have to be wary of where projects, especially in the digital arena, especially in our business technology spaces, are declared projects, and what are not. The term governance, just when you govern something, you restrict it, you restrain it, or you slow it down. So as soon as you declare something a project and you apply governance to it, by definition, you are slowing it down or you're restricting it. So if we want to get faster and we want to get better and we want to keep up with the pace of technology, we have to make sure that we're declaring the right pieces of work with the right definitions, the right kind of governance around them.
Do you think we're wrapping project management around things that we shouldn't because we're risk adverse? You know, why are these things that should be just BAU being wrapped into the project management space?
I think it's habitual now. I really do. I do think there is something about when you engage someone as an FTE, as a full-time employee, one of the things you now have to do is keep them busy. So we're giving them little pieces of work to keep them busy. But I'm in the mindset now, you've engaged me as a project manager, you give me this piece of work, I need or this standard, because that's what I've been employed to do. So it's like I say, we have created some of these challenges for ourselves in the way that we engage people, the way that we deliver projects and initiatives, and we need to have better feasibility into the piece of work to declare whether it is this kind of thing or whether it's that kind of thing, and then give the appropriate management.
Yeah. So we're talking about, you know, change and project delivery having to get faster. Where is that demand coming from? You know, is it a demand from ICT? Is it a business demand? Is it external, internal? Where is it coming from?
I think there's two places, really. I think the speed that technology is moving at isn't doing us any favors. I think you could honestly now in 2019, you could have a business case put on your table in January, and by December it's going to be the wrong technology that you've landed on. So I do honestly feel that there is demand from the pace of technology. I also think that everybody in the business space now is more tech savvy. I think if we look at our home lives, and we're all connected to the internet, we've all got tablet PCs, we've all got cell phones with mobile apps on them, we've all got access to so much information and cloud technology ourselves. If we don't see this in our business space, then it comes as like, well, this is a bit old-fashioned, right? And you look at the new people coming into the marketplace, those new employees, those millennials that are coming and hitting us now, and they'll look at your business operation and go, hey, what? You really do that? So sorry, let me just wrap my head around this. You produce a spreadsheet with some information in it. You pass it on to someone else. They add some more information to it. Then you pass it on to a manager, and they might consolidate all of these into another spreadsheet that's then passed on to someone. Hold on a second. I can do that on an app on my phone in 5 minutes. Why are we doing this? So there is demand coming from tech-savvy resources. There's demand coming from what we do in our home space. We expect to at least be doing in our business space, because surely you have more to invest in your business than I do into my home technologies. Then people want to work from home. People want to be remote working. People want to adopt latest cloud technologies. People want to consolidate information and have access to data. So all of this puts pressure on the delivery space, because who else is going to make this happen? Who else is going to facilitate this? And it also puts stress on enterprise architecture or similar functions within the business, because they've got to be seen to be more snappy at making decisions now. They need to be operating in a strategic bubble that used to be a 5, 7, 10 year strategy for IT and technology. And that may be condensed now into 2 or 3 years to get these decisions made and to implement this tech before it's out of date or out of support. I don't know how many times I've been parachuted into projects recently in the last 2 or 3 years where they're in trouble because the technology is now behind that initial curve that the business set out to achieve, or that benefit that the business was setting out to achieve by implementing the ERP, for example. Well, now we're looking at BI and the intelligence and business analytics. That ERP solution is almost dead. It's almost dead in the water before it's finished being implemented. Now we want to consolidate data, and now we want access to more information, and now we want dashboards and things present in real time. How do we get there? So all of these challenges are set out for us. Technology moves very, very fast, and when you have vendors focusing on specific products and services, you'll see every 3 to 6 months there's a different technology that you can now use, that you could implement to improve your business, that you wouldn't have even considered 3 months ago because it wasn't available, but now it is. Do we have to think about this right now? Do we have to transform and change to adopt this right now? Or when is it going to fit into that strategic technology roadmap for us? So I really do think the pressure on project management comes from the demands of the business, because the business needs to move faster now than it ever has done in the past. And technology is only going to evolve faster from this point forward. It's that we're never going to have a slowdown now. So we have to change the way we manage ourselves and our businesses, and we have to change the way that we think about technology, how we implement it, how we adopt it, and where the pressure should be. Should it be on our vendors in the cloud space, or should it be on our business in our business space? Which brings a whole new set of challenges then to and project delivery, because then where does the project manager live, right? In my view, and I'm going to put an old-fashioned hat on now, despite the spiky hair. The project manager has always been there to support the end consumer of the product or service. They're there to support their best interests. So that becomes a challenge and almost a conflict of interest sometimes when that project manager is engaged by maybe your IT department or by maybe a vendor. Because we always got to look at that end consumer, that person that's going to be engaged in consuming this at the end. Are their needs being met? Are we setting this up for them? Is it going to be successful when they receive it? And when you're looking at it purely from an IT perspective, sometimes you're only thinking about the product or service. You're not necessarily thinking about those that are impacted at the end. I'm sorry, that's a huge loop or that we went on there, but the pressures are definitely coming from the business. They're definitely coming from business consumers, because we are savvy now. And the pressures are definitely coming from the speed that vendors and suppliers are developing their products at. And finally, then, how does your project manager or how does your delivery team then support these new technologies, these new things, and where should they position themselves from a vendor, supplier, or from a business perspective. Interesting challenge.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a good sort of lead into my next question, which was, the traditional approaches, and let's use the word waterfall, the traditional approaches to project management, and then having to look at, well, when things are changing so fast, a 12-month, 2-year project, as you said, what was set out to deliver is no longer relevant because the world's moved on and things have changed beneath your feet. So we're looking at more agile ways of working. So we're hearing waterfall, agile, and then wagile, and it's like, seriously. It's like, I think the word agile has just been perverted beyond belief. But anyway, that might be another conversation. But in your world, Barry, how has the traditional project management had to adapt to this sort of new world?
Well, again, I think it's down to what brings the business value. It's looking at those end consumers, and if there is an opportunity to release something iteratively because the business is going to get value faster, then sure, why wouldn't you do that? But it doesn't really matter about the methodology that you choose to do that. You could do that in a waterfall space. You could do that in a Scrum kind of agile space as well. For me, there is a big difference between project delivery and, if you like, full stack project management and product development. So if we're developing a product and we've got to get it ready for market and that kind of stuff, and we're in that agile space of sprinting through things, then great, but we're in a product development state. And to get us to that product development state, we've already made a decision on what the project is going to look like, how it's going to be resourced, and the delivery approach. So we're still applying those project management, if you like, decisions or project management methods on making decisions on what's the most appropriate way to deliver this that gives the business the best bang for its buck. So we do have to look closely at how we deliver and what we deliver. And we also have to communicate with the business on what is it that they need. I think that we're all aware of, in the project management space, of the term triple constraint, which is the time, cost, quality triangle. So they're kind of the measures for project manager. Is it done on time? Is it done on budget or to the right cost? And what's the quality look like? But I just think if we reflect on that triple constraint triangle and change the words so that they're more business-friendly terms, how urgent is this? What's the budget that we need to keep within or to save money on? And what is the feasibility? Is it still worthwhile for us to go ahead with this? I think that really helps us then with delivery. It really helps us with making the decision on whether the big bang approach, chucking everything over the fence at the last minute is the right thing to do, or whether we can work better with our business on getting things done. And this is where I go back to that statement I made earlier on about it's the project manager's responsibility to work with the end consumers of the product and make sure that their needs are being met, rather than the needs of the vendor, rather than the needs of IT or whatever it is. Ultimately, it's them that's going to have to live with whatever it is that you're bringing in, the service or the product that you're implemented. And it's really for them to decide whether this is effective, the solution that we're doing, whether it's efficient, and whether what we're doing is relevant. And further to those measures of time, cost, and quality, the three measures of quality management are efficiency, effectiveness, and relevance. And we as project managers have a responsibility to tell our business whether this project is still feasible or not, based on those measures. Because if we don't, and we continue to just blindly deliver something that at the end of the day is really going to add no business value anymore, we've just spent a lot of money and wasted a lot of time. So we do need to keep up from that perspective as well. And there's a forever, again, back to basics thing. The thing that we're measuring the most is the feasibility of what we're delivering. Is it still going to add value? Every step of the way, is it still adding value? Is it still adding value? Or what can we adjust so we can bring value in early? Does that make sense? So from a project management perspective, we do have to learn to be more agile. But again, I think if we went back to that How is my customer or my end user going to be impacted by this? And what's the best thing for them? I think we do ask the right question then, and we will we'll have more assurance that we're going to be more successful in getting this thing done in the right way to please our customer, rather than just throw things over the fence or take the original statement as that was gospel and big bang it or something like that. We can adjust as we go.
So I think I hear what you're saying, absolutely. And I'm just wondering, from your observations across organizations, are you seeing project management and project managers being able to make that shift to that adaptation, to be flexible? Are they still stuck in the old ways of working, or do they need help?
I really do think it's dependent on the project manager. A stronger, experienced project manager will say, you know what, I'm not really comfortable with this. I think if we adjust and we went this way, it may be better for us. And this is all down to how you engage with your sponsor, how you engage with your business, and also presenting options. I think is really, really important. And one of the those full life cycle skills, if you like, that may get lost when we're pushed into the delivery management space. This also depends very much on how the project manager is managed. If they have a direct line into their sponsor, so that communication channel is open, and they don't have to go through 5 levels of management to get to their sponsor as they do in some places, I think it does make it easier for the PM and the sponsor to make decisions on what's best for the project and what's best for the business at that time. I think we do, I think we do sometimes look at governance or look at the standard or the framework that we're supposed to be applying, and we do get kind of blinkered into, we must do this, we must do that, we must do this. I don't think that has ever been the case. A standard is there to guide you, but you should only do what's appropriate. And if we get locked into that mentality of we must, I think that's some of the reasons that we get slowed down, or maybe why adaptation to more iterative and agile approaches aren't successful in some cases. All of that said, I do think it's something that's relatively easy to solve, though. I do think that there needs to be better communications with the people that are sponsoring projects about roles and responsibilities and what it is that we are capable of making decisions on and what we should be deciding for the benefit of the project. And again, I think that comes with strong project management or strong PMO leadership to be able to negotiate that with the sponsors at the time. And, you know, if you decide to go through full stack and you decide to have all of this governance, then it is going to slow this down. Do you accept that risk? It's a really easy question to ask, but I think it's one that does get overlooked quite a lot.
I think you're absolutely right. And I see it in lots of other areas as well. You know, it's defining what it is we're trying to achieve and what's the best way of doing that, and keep asking that question. You know, I see people, you know, I come from an IT service management background, and I see people using the Agile framework and trying to use it as a prescriptive Bible of the way to do things, which was never, ever the intent. From the 1980s, it's been saying adopt and adapt. Here's a set of good practices. Take the bits that you need for what you're trying to drive. And I just see people, I don't know whether they're looking for a holy grail or what it is, that they take something and they believe they have to do it by, you know, the letter of the law, and not having that flexible mindset to say, I'll use what's best for this job. So interesting. Also, I've heard, this isn't my question, it is my question, but it's because I've heard other people say it. And I think it's because the word agile has been, you know, misused, but I've heard the question, so if we're going to be truly agile, do we still need project management? That's your question.
Well, the simple answer is yes, because you can deliver in an agile fashion, but you will always be delivering projects as well. So again, this goes back to, what are we using agile for? Is Agile our methodology, our full stack from start to finish method? Because I don't believe that is the intent. I believe if we've got a product to develop or a service to develop, then when we plan and we execute or design and execute that product or service, that's where we're using our Agile functionality. But to get us there in the first place, to say this is the right approach to take, we've had to use some of the project management toolbox in advance of that to make sure that we're on the right path. And then when we're realizing benefit at the end, and we're getting the business ready to consume and use, and we're also going through adoption, and we're also going through decommissioning, and we're also going through other elements of the project management lifeline. It's not a cycle, but the lifeline, if you like. They're outside the realms of really the Agile space as well. Yeah, we can do things more iteratively. If that's where we're trying to get to, then sure. We want more agility, then we can be more agility. We don't have to prescribe that must do 1, 2, 3, 4 activities that we need to get completed to be compliant or whatever it is we're trying to measure against. We'll figure it out as we go, but we'll try and bring the best value we can forward as quickly as possible. Well, yeah, you can leverage the tools in whichever methodology you want to get there, but it must be appropriate for the type of project that you're doing. For example, if we're breeding elephants, we can't put 18 elephants in a room and agilely produce a baby elephant in a month. It's still going to take time. There is still that lead time into things, and also building houses and construction projects and things like this, laying pipelines are things that you have to do. You have to get permission to dig. You have to get certain things inspected at certain times. It's no good me putting the tiles on the roof before I've laid the foundation. So there are containers of things that we need to do, and we still need that project management or that project oversight expertise in that space. And when we're moving then into Scrum Masters and product owners and the Scrum Masters that are running the actual activities day to day, they still need some direction, if you like. Some effort has to be outside of that Agile box to make sure that the whole project is being delivered and not just the product or service.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I wanted to pick your brain, Barrie, about hearing the terms lean agents and cost of efficiency. What's that about? Again,
it's doing what's right, doing the appropriate amount of work to get the thing done. In this case, in the project delivery space, the project manager would always be your lean agent. And they're looking at, is this appropriate? Is this relevant for what we're trying to do? Are we going to spend time on this specific piece of effort, and does it bring us any value? Because if it doesn't, why are we doing it? And I think that is a really good challenge all the time. When we're justifying the cost of something, it shouldn't be the PM or the business that's making the decision. It should be the sponsor or the steering group that are making decisions on what is the best approach or what's the best direction to take. And that's because they're aware of the risk, they're aware of the options that are available, and they can make a decision with that information that's presented to them. And we can then focus on getting done with what we're told to, rather than I'm trying to think of the word, but it escapes me. But if we spend time doing things that are ineffective and are not relevant for the project, regardless of what our framework tells us to do or what our standard tells us or what our method tells us, it's not appropriate, then we shouldn't be doing it, or we should at least be leaning it out. And I think that's the best way to look at it. An example may be a stack of artifacts that you have to produce. We are told that we have to have a design document. We are told that we have to have instructional installation documents. We're told that we have to. Well, if it's more appropriate to have all of that in one artifact and the bits and pieces that support it be a chapter, well, then why don't we do that instead of writing a header and all this other stuff that we have to write and all these artifacts that take weeks to develop? Sometimes we're leveraging information that's already available to us. We use things like OneNote or some online tools that are out there. We could say, is the information in there appropriate? Can we adapt it for use when we're going through the warranty period or that? Or do we really need all of this stuff in advance? And then when we're looking at our agile practices and we're doing this iterative delivery, we've also got to look at things like release management and all of this stuff. How many times, if we're going to go for an iterative delivery, and before we're pushing this stuff into production for people to consume because it's going to bring value, how many times are we going to go through CAB? How many times are we going to have release management? How many times are we going to have security look at this? How many meetings do we have to talk about this stuff? Or can we, narrow this down to a smaller focus group so we can make decisions faster? So again, I think this takes me back a little bit as well as to where the project manager operates within the business, because expedience is about getting decisions made quickly. So we as project managers need to be engaged or engaging with the right stakeholders at the right time to get decisions made. And if we are, and I've seen this several times in North America and Canada, if the project managers are reporting to a PMO manager, that PMO manager is reporting to a project director, that director is reporting to an executive director, that executive director is reporting to a vice president, the vice president is reporting to someone else who's someone else, and eventually you get to the person who's the sponsor in your organization, which is where the PM needs to engage with. But because your manager doesn't get to engage with the executive director, they go, well, why do you want to go and speak to the executive director? We immediately get those blockers in place. And I think it works better with matrix organizations where you spin up a project, your project manager is reporting to an executive, and that's known and understood. And once that project is running, they're the manager, if you like, they're the decision maker, and we remove those layers of blocks that are in the way. And like I said in the back at the beginning of the conversation, I think we've created a lot of these challenges ourselves. And perception from the businesses that project management is over bureaucratic or over governed, because we have all of these challenges, all these blocks in our way. So we need to lean all of this stuff out. We need to be more efficient in the management and the governance of things, and then we can be more efficient in the delivery and more expedient in getting things to market for our clients.
Awesome. And we've used the terms, and I think this is a common confusion or common question across lots of frameworks and methodologies. We use the terms good practice and we use the term best practice. What are we supposed to be what's the difference, and what should we strive for?
It's a real pet hate of mine. Coming from a quality management background, the term best practice makes me shudder every time I hear it. And it's because it's a blend of two different terminologies that's become common, so we've used it. The actual terms are good practice and being best in class at applying good practice. So rather than use all of those words, someone at some point made the decision, best practice sounds good, we'll use that. The problem is when you use the term best practice, it implies, just by being best, that it can't be improved. But a best from yesterday is not going to be best tomorrow. Roger Bannister run the 4-minute mile. Fantastic. He was the best. Now there's 1,000 runners across the planet that are running 4-minute miles pretty regularly, or more than that probably. But what was best at a point in time isn't necessarily going to be best today, and is certainly not going to be best tomorrow. So we should really try and avoid using that term, because once you believe you've applied best practice, you just turn your head away from it now. Or we've already got best practice, we don't need to look at it anymore. So that doesn't help us in a world of continuous improvement, in a world of we need to collaborate to make things better, if you're using terms like best all the time. So I want to adjust it again. I want to go back to those, again, basic principles of ISO 9001 quality management systems that applies good practices, or when you're measured, you're best in class at applying those good practices. But those good practices can always be improved. Absolutely.
And I'm going to ask you a question now that's very, very close to my heart, because I have a big passion for organizational change, which is the worst title it could have been given, but the people side of change. So do you believe that projects have to give more or less consideration? Are they giving, I suppose, let me rephrase that. Are they giving adequate consideration to the people side of the changes that the projects are driving?
In short, no, they're not. And I think the people side of delivery, especially in the technical space, has to improve. There has to be better collaboration. I just, I believe in adjusting our principles through measuring that triple constraint triangle that I talked about earlier. If we remove the mindset of time, cost, quality, and go back with urgency, budget, and feasibility, what's best for the people that I'm supposed to be looking after, which are those end consumers again, I think we'll see a change. I think, again, I'll go back to, I'm banging this drum quite a lot today, so I apologize about that. But we've got into this, we've got into habits, and we've made these challenges for ourselves. Your IT department has employed project managers. They've called them IT project managers. And because they're the employee of IT, they always look as IT to be the people that they're supposed to be operating in the best interest of. And we've kind of lost that project management sensibility that, no, the people that we're acting for are the people that are paying for the project. The end consumers, the business sponsors of this, they're really where our focus should be. And we have to collaborate much better. We have to go back to the mentality that the people that are making, or the people that are consuming this product or service at the end, are the most important people in this project. If we're not satisfying them, no matter what you do, you can have the most successful project in the world based on those principles of time, cost, and quality. But once you've dropped it over the fence, because they don't need it or don't want it or can't consume it, it actually adds no value whatsoever to the business. And again, you've just spent a lot of time, you spend a lot of money, and you've got a product that isn't going to be consumed. And I don't know how many times I've seen massive ERP projects fail in that exact manner, because they fail to engage their business, they fail to keep up with what the value proposition is for those consumers of the product or the service at the end of the day, and they fundamentally fail to ask the questions that, is this still relevant? Is this thing still challenging you? Is this the thing that we need? So we lose sight often of what the value is, and the value is in the people. Because if they don't support the project, once it's been delivered, the project will be perceived as a failure, regardless of how well you've got it done.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great message to wrap up this conversation. But before we do that, I want to go back to something you mentioned right at the beginning, Barry. Tell us very briefly about the book, when we're going to see it on the shelves.
Well, thank you for that opportunity. So the book is called, so the working title is Project Management Back to Basics. It talks about a lot of the things that we've discussed in this conversation, but it also talks about what is a project, really back to basics. What's the role of a project manager? So we can start communicating these messages back again into hiring manager space, into business management space, into the recruiters space. So we really understand what it is, the role that the project manager performs and where they add value. So regardless of the method or the framework or what we're trying to leverage to govern our projects, we can always be aware of where a project manager adds value to our business. So it's going to be available in September. We don't have a release date nailed in. I'm working through that rapidly right now and trying to get all the reviews and that finished off. It's been quite the challenge, and I've really, really enjoyed it. So yeah, we're aiming for beginning the Q4 this year.
Awesome, and I will look forward to that. So back to basics, it's going to be good. Barry, thank you so much for your time. It's been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it, and I think there's a lot in that 30-something minutes for everybody to take away. So thank you very much for that conversation.
Thank you.
So coming up soon will be Karen's Conversations number 36. Keep watch for that. Once again, thanks to Barrie Clarke talking about project management.